Marguerite makes a book. Chapter 3. Marguerite sets to work. As soon as she got home, Marguerite lit the fire, set a small pot of water to boil, and unpacked her basket. Then she set to work. The first part was easy. She would need a quill and ink to draw with. She shaped a goose quill with a knife until the end was very sharp yet flexible. Then she scraped some soot off the wall of the fireplace and mixed it with glue and an oyster shell. Soon she had rich black ink. Marguerite started to draw. With swift, delicate strokes, bouquet after bouquet of blooming flowers and nesting birds began to emerge in the margins of the manuscript. Gold leaf came next. In another oyster shell, Marguerite mixed chalk powder, glue, and a drop of honey. Then in the margins, she carefully dabbed dots of the mixture and let them dry. She slowly picked up a shimmering square of gold leaf, breathed on the dots of glue to warm them, then laid the square over the dots. Where the gold did not stick, she brushed the gold leaf away. Then, with Papa's smooth brushing stone, she polished the dots of gold leaf to a brilliant shine, like the sun of heaven above, as Master Raymond whispered. Now she was ready to make her colors. She began with a very simple, yet extremely important step. She broke one of the eggs that Blanche had given her. She separated out the yolk and beat the egg white in a clean bowl until it became foamy. Then she set the bowl aside to let the liquid settle. She would need 5 colors: deep red, yellow, green, bright red, and blue. First, Marguerite put the red roots of the madder plant into the pot of water that was now boiling. The water immediately turned a deep, dark red, the same red she always thought as the stained glass windows of Notre Dame. She added egg white to the red liquid to make a paint that flowed easily off her brush. Green came next. She crushed a handful of fresh parsley until a deep green juice came out. This, too, she mixed with egg white to create paint that was just thick enough. Now for the yellow, which came from the dried saffron flowers. She placed the crushed flowers into a little cloth bag and laid the bag in a small dish of egg white. The yellow color seeped out of the bag and into the egg white, making a nice thin paint. Then bright red. Using the mortar and pestle, Marguerite broke up a cake of vermilion, grinding it into powder. As before, she mixed the powder with egg white, or with the egg. Finally, the most beautiful of all, blue. She made a ball from wax and pine pitch, into which she mixed the crushed up powdered lapis lazuli. Dropping the ball into a bowl of warm water, she gently stirred and watched very closely. Almost like magic, the finest, bluest particles of lapis lazuli slowly began to emerge from the ball, turning the water blue. Marguerite waited for the blue particles to settle to the bottom of the bowl. Then she carefully poured off the clear water. There at the bottom was pure blue. When mixed with some egg white, the paint was the color of the Virgin Mary's robe, the color of heaven itself. Now Marguerite was ready to paint. She started by painting the flowers in the margins of the parchment page. She smiled to herself as she decided to make the flowers her flowers, the daisies known as Marguerites. Using the dried saffron flower mixture, she painted the centers of the daisies bright yellow. Around the edges of the white petals, she painted yellow shadows. Using the crushed parsley mixture, she painted the leaves and stems of the Marguerites bright green. She leaned back to look at her work. The petals and leaves looked as though they were twisting and bending in the wind. She was pleased. Marguerite had drawn nesting birds in the margins. Now, using the precious lapis lazuli, she began to fill in their outlines in brilliant blue. The saffron that the afternoon was beginning to slip away, and Marguerite had to squint slightly in the changing light. No wonder Papa needs glasses, she thought, brushing back a strand of her hair that had fallen into her eyes. Her hands made exact, delicate movements over the page. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't even notice when her cat, Gabrielle, jumped onto the table behind her and began to play with a string.
Oh, what's next?
But what she wanted to do most of all was to complete the portrait of the Lady Isabel that Papa had already begun. In black ink, he had drawn the outline of the lady kneeling before a prayer book. Marguerite painstakingly began to fill in Papa's drawing, beginning with Lady Isabel's robe. She decided it would be bright vermilion red, like the dress she had once seen the noble lady wear. Using the much darker red from the crushed madder root, she painted in the shadows of the folds of the beautiful dress, and the brocade designs on the gown. As a finishing touch, she traced fine gold lines along the folds of the dress, making them sparkle in the light, just as Papa did. Suddenly, Marguerite heard someone at the door. She glanced outside the window and was startled to see that dusk was beginning to fall. How many hours had passed since she had started painting? Then she heard a booming voice. It was André.